Have you ever left work feeling like you've run a marathon, but instead of feeling accomplished, you just felt small, drained, maybe even invisible? In today's episode, we dive into the questions so many of us ask silently. What makes a workplace toxic? And more importantly, is a tough boss necessarily a bully? Or can we learn to tell the difference? To explore these questions, I sat down with Magdalena Jelonkiewicz-Bałdys, a psychologist and psychotherapist. She's someone who's not really afraid to walk with you into the difficult corners of your mind. And today, she helps us shine a light on the hidden dynamics of toxic work culture, what good feedback really sounds like, and how to stay grounded when the professional world feels anything but safe. So, grab your headphones, take a deep breath, and let's talk about the workplaces we deserve and the strength it takes to name the ones that hurt us. Welcome to Kasia Białek podcast. Let's get it started. Magda, is mobbing a new phenomenon? Maybe post-COVID one, or it has been always existing, but we are just talking about it more openly now?
Well, unfortunately, mobbing is not a new phenomenon. It is, as I may say, as old as the hills. The issues have existed for a long time, well before COVID. What has changed is our awareness and willingness to talk about it openly. And I think that pandemic brought workplace dynamics and organizational problems into sharper focus. People recognize and name harmful behaviors rather than tolerate them. And when I work with organizations and HR offices, and when they're discussing the best benefits for their employees, nowadays it's not only, a card to the gym or medical insurance, but they also provide psychological support. So, no, unfortunately, mobbing is not a new phenomenon, but we've been talking about it a lot recently.
In social media, we speak a lot about that. That's why also I invited you to this podcast. Unfortunately, this kind of behavior is more and more common. But to start with maybe some definitions, what is the real difference between high pressure and toxic behavior or mobbing? Because I think that nowadays we are bombarded by different kind of definitions and different kind of explanations of all of these things and behaviors. Could you please tell us, what is the difference?
First of all, I'd like to refer to the word toxic because I have a little bit of a problem with that. It's definitely become a bit of a buzzword lately. And I believe that sometimes it's used too broadly to describe any kind of discomfort or disagreement at work or difference of opinions, because originally toxic, it's a behavior that is truly harmful. It's like persistent aggression, bullying, manipulation, and emotional abuse. And that definitely and deeply affects people's mental health and well-being, right? However, we might have some individuals who are hypersensitive through no fault of their own. It's just through their previous experiences that might use that word too often when it comes to, for example, a firm feedback, and holding somebody accountable. So, what do you think? Do you have similar impression about that word?
Yes, I agree, Magda. I think it's a term that is so common nowadays that it just simplifies everything that we feel. Maybe the feeling of any discomfort that we have.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And you've asked me whether there was a difference between high pressure and toxic management or abusive management. And, I've been thinking about it. And the answer is complex because yes and no. It is both objective and subjective, what we regard as abusive or mobbing. And I think it's important to talk about both. Because on the objective side, psychology and organizational research gives us clear indicators of abusive behavior, abusive leadership, right? This includes patterns of public humiliation, personal attacks, threats, intimidation, or undermining someone's work or dignity. And what's important, that these behaviors are not about high standards, but they are about what? Control, fear, and dominance. That's very important. Yeah. So it's nothing about, trying to help the other person to reach their fullest potential, but it's like management through fear, right? So that's on the objective side. And on the subjective side, how we experience being led and being managed is shaped by our individual psychological patterns. So if somebody has a strong sensitivity to criticism, they might perceive firm feedback as toxic, as I said before. Yeah. And then the same person for one employee might be a firm mentor, and for somebody else, it might be a person they're afraid of. Yeah. So this might be a paradox. Just imagine when somebody is quite afraid of the other person, maybe because they have themselves totally crazy standards about their own performance, unrealistic performance. And when they are met with criticism, they might, wave that flag. Oh my God, toxic behavior. They don't realize that by doing so, they might become a little bit of a trouble within a team. Yeah. So I think it's very important. And you know it yourself that when you're talking about mobbing or difficult organization situations, it can happen in any direction and on any level. Yeah. Up and down and up, and among peers.
Exactly. Here I have even two questions, because
Right.
you mentioned about feedback, giving
Yes.
feedback to anybody. So yes,
Yeah.
let's say that I am a very sensitive person, but my leader is very demanding, and he doesn't really use negative adjectives, pejorative words to describe my work. But what would be the best example of a good feedback to anybody, so people don't feel this discomfort, and they rather, after hearing a
You see, we
feedback.
are in a trap here, Kasia. We are in a trap because there is no technique that will make the other person feel comfortable. Sorry, no, wrong. There are techniques, and I'm going to share them now in a second, but there is never a guarantee that the other person will take them well. Because we're going to talk later on about our tolerance for criticism. And if you are like when your resources are down, you've been stressed for a long time, and you're not sleeping well, and you have no time for physical activity, and you forget to drink water, and you forget your basics to be in a good form, then you're drained. And then even a normal remark can make you cry. I have clients who say, oh my God, I think something's wrong with me because I got a normal email. Somebody asked me to add a data to a table I've prepared. And my reaction was I bursted into tears. So that to me would be a sign of being overwhelmed and overburdened at work, because that's not a normal and standard reaction for that person. I know we are off the topic a little bit. I remember your question. It was about the feedback, and I can go on to it. Yeah.
Yes, of course. But as you said, everything that we do in our private life and what we experience in our private life has a big influence on what is going on at work. But of course, everything that we experience at work has also influence on our private life. So of course, everything comes together in one line. So yes, let's try to take care of ourselves mentally and physically, of course. So what would be a good example of good feedback?
Of course. Well, maybe I'll talk about a good attitude of a leader. A good leader knows that he or she has a variety of personalities in the team, and they can adapt the language and the attitude according to the person's personality, but also to the level of their experience at work and to their motivational levels. Because throughout our time in organization, every employee goes through various phases. Okay, let's not go into that. Anyways, if you are looking for a recipe that should be right, it would be talking about facts and observations that are objective, and that includes, okay, we've agreed you will do this and that until today, 12 o'clock, for example. Yes, we're talking about facts. There's no abuse, there's no name calling, there's no asking, why haven't you done it? First, you start with the observation, then you talk about what impact this met reality has on you, leader, and on the team and on the task. So you might say, we've agreed that today by 12 o'clock, you are going to deliver this data. Now I see it's 4 o'clock p.m. I don't have that data and I'm getting a bit nervous because in half an hour, I have a meeting with CEO and I'm in urgent need of those data. Yeah. Second part. And then you ask a question or you deliver your request. So you might ask, can you tell me what happened that I haven't received those data yet? Or you might ask, do you need any help with that particular task? Because it's really important for me to have it on time. Or you might say, please send them to me as soon as possible. And now, so we have facts, we have the feelings or the impact of this reality on the leader, and then you have a request for question. And what is also nice is to look after the relationship as well. So especially for those high performance and sensitive people, it is nice to add something like, my intention is not to make you stressed even more or micromanage you, but I really care for the presentation in front of the CEO. Or I really like enjoying working with you. And I think it's nice to have clear rules. And you know me, I like to be always on time. So it's extra stressful for me when the deadlines I set to myself are not being met. Yeah. So I hope it wasn't too complex. I'll repeat, it's facts, is the impact of those facts on me now. It's minding the relationship and uttering your request. That would be a nice formula of a feedback.
Maybe that will be in a inappropriate joke, but when you're speaking about these components of good feedback, what comes to my mind is writing a complaint. Because if I received a phone that doesn't work, my wish is to receive either another one or just a solution to my problem, because I paid money for something that doesn't work. So what we learned at school, how to write a complaint, was also explaining, speaking about the facts, because nobody is none of us is guilty about the phone that doesn't work. It's just the phone, right? It's an item. So they didn't meet my expectations when it comes to the item that I ordered. And what another component of a good complaint is also writing what kind of consequences I had because of the fact that I received an unworking phone. And what I want to receive is a solution. So I should finish this complaint saying that I hope you will find a solution. Please, let's keep in touch. Let's keep respect between the provider and between me as a client, and let's find a solution. So everything what is going on in here, it's just respect and basing things on facts, because everybody has their own truth, as we say, right? That in my opinion, you did this and this, and I felt bad because you did this and that. But if we just maybe dig a bit deeper, we should just sit down and think and talk. Magda, what happened to you that you behaved that way, right?
Exactly. And I think you're very right, because, complaint is a negative feedback, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you just grasped it really well. But what you're saying is focus on facts and not assume things. I like to say that a truly wise person is the one who knows that their thoughts are just hypotheses, right? I
Mm-hmm.
might have that judgment in my head because I'm just a human, right? And if I'm really stressed, those thoughts might be more negative. So I might think, oh my God, that person failed yet again. They must do it on purpose. They dislike me, or they want to take revenge at me for what I said the other day during the meeting, blah, blah, blah. And the thing is not to believe those thoughts. Yeah, because they're just thoughts. You might catch them and assess them and say, okay, these are my hypotheses. This is my imagination running wild because I'm under pressure. I'm going to check it. So instead of entering into a conversation with that attitude of, how could you do it to me? You say, hey, tell me what happened. Because life has proven me that people might have sent those data to me on time, but there was some, can I say fuck up on the way with technology? Or, it might have happened through no fault of the sender, because various situations happen on the way. So I always take the benefit of the doubt and I just check and verify. And I think that in the other person's world, I am really just a speck of maybe not a speck of the dust, but I'm not as important for them, so that they need to take revenge at me. They have other problems and I have no idea what's going on in their lives. Yeah.
All of these phenomena are very complex, but if you could give us a simple definition of mobbing, what would it be?
Okay, so mobbing would be a systematic and long-term psychological harassment and bullying in the workplace. Yeah, and the aim is to isolate, humiliate, or force the person to leave their job. So that would be, what a one-time situation when somebody had an awful and abusive and aggressive comment, which is totally unacceptable. But that would repeat over time. That would be persistent behavior, right? Spreading rumors, exclusion, constant criticism, micromanagement. That would be. And again, the aim is to humiliate and to force the other person to leave, to quit.
And is it easy to understand that we have a mobber at work? Because I could imagine that people start asking themselves questions. Hey, okay, there's somebody who doesn't like the way I work. He or she tries to humiliate me in front of people, but maybe he's right. Maybe something is wrong with me. What should we do to understand that it's real mobbing?
You see, Kasia, I wouldn't focus on a definition, but I wouldn't focus on how does it feel for me to be in contact with the other person. Because I think that the line between demanding leadership and abusive leadership is whether you fear the other person or whether you feel mobilized to outperform yourself. Yeah, because when the fear comes in, and when you start doubting yourself, and when you think you're worthless, it doesn't matter whether it's mobbing or if it's an abusive, awful person. It's all the sign for you to immediately look after yourself. Because if it's unattended, you will end up having some serious consequences for your health. You might, develop anxiety or depression, and you will have to take an absence of leave to mind your health. So again, I wouldn't focus on the terms, but I would definitely mind myself. I would go to talk to a friend or to a specialist, and with the help of the friend or a specialist or a person in HR whom I trust, I would learn, I would educate myself what is abusive behavior and what is mobbing, and then I would know how to act, right? Because if it's an abusive behavior, you might protect yourself when you start setting boundaries and you openly tell the mobber, I do not appreciate it. Stop. I see what you are doing. I don't like it. People don't do it because they're afraid. But if they don't do it, they give a clear sign to the mobber, that is acceptable. Come on, we know Tom. Tom is a little bit aggressive, but yet he has the best results in our team. That's horrific, yeah? So a victim needs to stand their ground, and they need to help themselves by saying, stop, I don't like it, it's abusive, your comment is disrespectful, I do not appreciate it. If you keep talking to me like that publicly, I'm going to report it. Yeah? And if they if they go to HR and they find out what mobbing is and what type of behavior cues can signify it is the mobbing situation, then they can get ready to file a formal complaint. Yeah, because if you want to file a formal complaint, you need to have a proof. That's the problem.
Thank you very much. I appreciate these advices, because you don't give us a simple answer, because everything for psychologists, everything depends. So yes, awareness is the first thing. So instead of concluding things.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Somebody might say, oh my God, you're hypersensitive. That's an insult. That's an insult. It's my nervous system reacting to the situation. And I am as I am. So even when I go to a psychologist and I talk about this instance when I felt humiliated, and even if in the therapist's head it's acceptable, that we are taught to take into brackets our reality because we are not the other person. And if you want to work on yourself, the first step is always acceptance. So even if somebody ends up their coaching or counseling sessions with this thought in their head, okay, I am a really sensitive person. I am a vulnerable person, and I don't treat it as a weakness. I am going to mind myself. So given the fact I am sensitive and I want to build relationships and be in a relationships that I'm respected. So given that reality, what can I do? And then the answer might be, I want to quit. I don't want to be in such environments. Not because I'm weaker or oversensitive. It's just because it harms the most precious person in the world, namely myself.
And we should respect ourselves. Exactly.
Yes.
If we don't respect ourselves, nobody would.
Yes.
Talking about anxiety and feeling stressed, how does stress in the workplace manifest from person to person?
That's a good question. We are all different, and we have a different window of tolerance for dealing with stress. On general terms, we might say that there are some common physical symptoms like headaches, migraines, muscle tension, especially neck, shoulders, back, or insomnia, oversleeping, and so on. And obviously the emotional symptoms, anxiety, nervousness, irritability, mood swings, and so on. Yeah. And when it comes to our performance, stress makes us either to avoid and procrastinate dealing with difficult tasks, or to turn into workaholics and do take into an excessive amount of work. Yeah. But I've mentioned at the very beginning of answering your question this phrase, window of tolerance. That was coined by Dan Siegel, and it's a very interesting concept. Well, basically, it's this area within your nervous system in which you can handle quite well all the life difficulties, right? So if you are within your window of tolerance, you are able to process and successfully respond to the demands of everyday life. You can handle life's ups and downs without getting overwhelmed. It's like being in the good groove on a squash court. Life keeps firing balls at you one after another, but you have your feet under you, you're alert, steady, and you are hitting them back with ease. Yeah. So you realize that maybe the way you deal with stress is not perfect, but you still are in the game, and you can think with clarity. Yeah, do you know that state, Kasia? Being able to handle stress well.
A bit.
A bit. We are
I
still in
think
this
like everybody.
conversation. We are still in this conversation, so we are feeling the stress well. Well, what's interesting is that it is impossible to stay in that window of tolerance because we are complex creatures. Yeah. We might wish, give me a strategy for always to be calm in stressful situations, but it is not possible. It's unreal because stress pushes us outside of this window, either up into hyper arousal. This is when anxiety and panic kicks in, racing thoughts. You are easily irritated or angry. You have trouble concentrating. You feel relentless. And it's because your nervous system, your sympathetic nervous system, triggers the fight or flight response. And you are in overdrive. You're prepared to deal with a threat, even if there isn't any. So that could be one way of leaving the window. And the other one is going down into hypoarousal. Hypo means below. So you are into a state of shutdown and numbness. Yeah. And you're feeling numb, disconnected, apathetic. It's like lying down in the bed and having no energy to get up and even to grab a glass of water. You have the brain fog, you're spacing out, you're feeling emotionally flat. And this is your nervous system saying, I can't cope, I'm checking out. And it's due to your parasympathetic nervous system, which is like a brake pedal on the car. Yeah. The first one that I talk about is like being always revved up with your foot on the gas pedal. And the second one is by slowing down.
It's just biology. So it's very good. Yeah. And it's very good to build this awareness as we spoke at the beginning. And what could we do if we feel overwhelmed? Could you give one advice to someone listening who feels close to the edge?
You see, first of all, it's good to understand that you are not a machine and you are not a broken machine that needs fixing. Yeah. And if you are close to the edge, it's a sign that you still care, and long for a different type of lifestyle, right? So what we need always and always is to broaden our self-awareness, to identify the triggers. The triggers can be phenomena, they can be tasks, they can be people, they can be attitude at work. So triggers that make us leave the window of tolerance. And then just watch ourselves, whether we are going into hyperactivity or whether we are going into shutdown mode. And we need to act the opposite to return to the window of tolerance. So, Kasia, as you can imagine, if we are in hyperactivity and we are stressing out, we are running around like headless chickens, what do we need to do? Well, you need to slow down. You need to slow down, take a few breaths, maybe pause and orient yourself, look around. You might, drink a chamomile tea or relaxing music or do some aromatherapy. You just need to do all those activities that cool down your nervous system before you go to the new activity. And if you are in apathetic state and disconnected, what do you need to do to go to your window of tolerance?
Start running.
Yay, exactly. You need some energy. So it can be stretching, shaking out your arms and legs, or cold water splashed on your face, or drink something with a strong taste like minced tea or coffee, louder music, or marching in place, tapping your feet to a beat. Yeah. And always when you are naming the reality, that helps your brain. Yeah. Because you are then not your full existence is in this realm, but your frontal cortex, your inner observer says, I feel shut down right now and I am reconnected. Yeah, if you are in shutdown. And if you are in the hyperactivity, you might say, for example, I feel anxious. My thoughts are racing, but I'm safe now. Yeah.
It seems quite easy.
Yeah. You see, it's all about accepting and not fighting the state you are in, which might be quite difficult because we do the contrary. If we are stressed, we tell ourselves, oh, come on, don't be stressed. It was just a silly remark. Yeah, It's just a job. And that doesn't help because you need to acknowledge that it is really difficult and hard what you're going through. Yeah.
Acknowledging and broadening awareness. Exactly. Thank you very much, Magda, for this interview.
Thank you so much, Kasia, for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.